Hello and welcome to one and all. So we will move on to the next topic, next unit, which is planning and Niti Aayog. Okay. So first, what is the meaning of planning? So here, planning we are referring to the economic planning done by the government. Okay. So basically, each and every country they adopt certain methods to develop their own economies. So it differs from one country to country depending upon the what type of economic systems they are following. I mean, basically, you know that there are three types of economic systems: capitalism, socialism, and mixed economic system. So, depending upon this type of economic system, the country chooses to develop its own economy. So, one of the methods adopted popularly by most of the countries which are following either socialistic pattern of economic system or the mixed economic system. So, they adopt something called as planning. Okay, so this is a basically the government or any central planning authority they fix certain targets and they find a strategy to achieve those targets. So those targets are invariably related to the economic development of a country. So put it in words. So economic planning is basically it is a technique. So it is a technique adopted by a control authority. Most often it is the government. So by a control authority to achieve certain predetermined objectives or targets. And these targets have to be achieved within a specified period of time. Within a specified period of time. Okay. So just uh, let me explain to you what are all the steps involved. So what exactly is this planning involves? So steps involved in planning. So first one, the planning authority, they have has to fix certain targets. I mean, can be anything like uh, this much should be the capital formation in the country, or national income of the country should be increased to so and so percentages. So like, or the per capita population has to be controlled, or per capita income of the country should be increased to so and so percentage. Employment opportunities to be given to so and so lakhs or thousands of people. So it can be anything. So like that. So within this given period of time, this many persons have to be given the employment. So like that in a given period of time. So it can be anything, or it can be 3 or 4 or 5 objectives to be achieved within a given period of time. Okay. Then second thing, what has to be done is they have to adopt a strategy. So what strategy they should adopt? So strategy is nothing but a technique. So they should choose a technique so that these targets could be achieved. Okay. And then afterwards, they have to mobilize the resources. So after fixing the targets and deciding about the strategy, they have to mobilize all the resources. Resources in the sense they should have that many required amount of men, basically men, money, finance, and material. Okay. Then after mobilizing the required amount of resources, the next step is to allocate the resources to different sectors. So allocate the resources according to plan priorities or objectives. According to plan priorities, or targets. See, the thing is, it is not possible for the government, for any country for that matter, to develop all the sectors simultaneously. So, of course, suppose for example, let us take it is the target fixed by the government is to increase the national income. The growth rate in national income should be around 6%. Okay, so this growth rate in national income in 6% can be achieved either by developing the agricultural sector or the industrial sector or the tertiary sector, isn't it? So it is not possible for the government or any country to allot resources to all the three sectors simultaneously. So no country is having that much amount of men, money, and material to be allocated to all the three different sectors simultaneously. So it can be done, the government can focus only on one sector. So if the government tries to develop the agricultural sector, so the more amount of men, money, and material will be devoted, directed towards the agricultural sector, and less percentages for the other two sectors respectively. So like that, according to the plan priorities. So now if you fix the targets, so when the government is fixing the national income, then the next target will be what should be the growth rate of agricultural sector. So suppose if the government is adopting that kind of strategy, that kind of technique, then the government will fix the what should be the growth rate of agricultural sector. So more importance, more priority will be given to the progress of agricultural sector. So more and more investment will go into the that particular sector. That doesn't mean the government is totally neglecting the other two sectors. Other two sectors will also be given the resources, allocated the resources, but relatively lesser amount than compared to the agricultural sector. So according to the plan priorities or targets, the resources should be allotted. That is a next step. And then after doing all this, implement the programs. So implement the programs according to this, whatever the strategy the government has chosen. So implement the programs as per the technique or the strategy chosen. Okay, and after uh, implementing all the programs, then the next one is evaluate the results. So what do you mean by evaluate the results? So compare the achievements. So already the government has fixed the targets, isn't it? So compare the achievement with the targets, whether the national income has really increased to 6%, whether this many people have been given the employment opportunities, whether the agricultural growth rate has increased to this much extent. So like that, whatever according to the targets, what the government has fixed, compare the results, whether we have achieved or not. So then if it is not achieved, then whatever the mistakes are observed, which will be carried forward in the next plan. Okay, that is what is it. So observe the, see, there might be so many changes happening during the course of the planning period, isn't it? So situation might not be the same. So whatever uh, there might be shortfalls, or the plan objectives could not have been met. So then observe what was the reason for that mistake, what was the reason for that shortfall. So observe the mistakes which has to be rectified in the next plan, to be rectified in the next plan period. So each country, they have different uh, what do you say, periods of planning. For example, Russia was having a, 7-year planning. In India, we were having the 5-year period. So depends upon the nature of economic system. It's totally left to the individual governments of the country. Okay, so these are all the steps of planning, and there is a difference between what is a plan and what is planning. So difference between Plan and planning. A planning cannot be done without a plan. What planning you have to do? For that, you should have a plan in your hand. That's the difference. Or in other words, plan means it is only a document. So it is only a document, or what you call as a blueprint. For example, you want to construct a house or anything, so you are having a blueprint, isn't it? I mean, giving all the details of the house. So when you are actually uh, constructing the house according to the blueprint you have, then that is planning. So it is, that is like a difference between plan and planning. So the plan is only a document or blueprint of the action. What action has to be done, which is in the form of a document, that is plan. And whereas the planning is actually you are taking the action according to the blueprint. So that is according to the blueprint. In other words, you are taking action according to the plan. Okay, so that is the difference between plan and planning. Okay, and uh, depending upon the nature of economic systems, again, there are different types of planning. Okay, the types of planning varies from one country to another country, which again depends upon the what is the nature of economic system. So let us check out what are all broadly what are all the various types of planning. So the first type of planning is planning under capitalism. So basically, capitalism is mostly run by the uh, private sector. The role of government is only to maintain the law and order. Like, the role of government is very, very minimum. So obviously, the role of planning is also very, very minimum in capitalistic countries. So capitalism basically, what are the main characteristics of capitalism? Capitalism is driven by market forces of demand, supply, and price mechanisms, with the basic objective of what is the main motive of the private sector to earn more and more profit, isn't it? So that means what capitalism is driven by market forces of demand, supply, and price, with the basic objective of profit. Driven by market forces. What is driven by market forces? So the basic problems of economy: what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce, or in other words, all the production, trade, business activities, all the decisions are undertaken according to the market forces of demand, supply, and price. So if the demand is more for a particular commodity, the resources will be allotted for the production of that particular commodity. If because the demand is more, the price will increase in the market, the producers will get more and more amount of profit. So the basic fundamental problems of an economy, how to produce, what to produce, for whom to produce, is totally decided by the market forces of demand, supply, and profit. So basically, that's why in the capitalistic economy, people are free to do anything. So there is freedom of enterprise. The businessmen, they can choose any type of commodity or service to be produced or rendered. It is nobody is going to say that you are not supposed to start this business, you're not supposed to start that business. So there is a freedom of enterprise among the producer, and that is also called as consumers sovereignty. So consumer is treated as a king in the capitalistic system of society. Why? What is the meaning of consumer is sovereignty, or consumer is treated as a king? Because whatever the commodity or service which a consumer is demanding, so only those kinds of commodities or those kinds of services will be made available in the country. So he is almost like a king dictating the resources to be allotted in that particular direction. So because of this, the role of planning is very, very limited in the capitalistic countries. So hence, the role of planning and government. The government is there only to provide the very, very basic services and maintain the security of the country. So it is very, very limited. So all the so all the decisions regarding the production, allocation of resources, everything is undertaken because of based on the market mechanism. So you can have the, for example, you have the USA, UK, Germany, all these are etc. So all these countries, they follow the capitalistic system of society. So that is the first type of planning. Okay. Then the second one is planning in mixed economy. So planning in mixed economy, both the public sector and the private sector operate side by side. That is a mixed economic system. And uh, even though the private sector is operating side by side with the public sector, in the public sector, everything, all the decisions are made by the government, and that is planning authority. And even though the private sector is operating side by side, the private sector has to follow the rules and regulations according to the planned priorities. Or in other words, in a mixed economic system, the role of planning, the role of government is relatively higher than the what it is under the capitalistic system of society. So basically, in mixed economy, both public, that is public in the sense what all the businesses or activities which are owned, controlled, and operated by the government. So that is government owned, and private sectors operate side by side. So what we are having, that we are having in mixed economy, there is a central planning authority. So there is a central planning authority which is responsible to make all the decisions. So all the fixing of the targets, mobilizing of men, material, all those to make all the decisions, devising the strategies. So all these are decided by the central planning authorities. And the private sector, they cannot operate on their own. They are supposed to operate, they are controlled, ruled, and regulated by the government. So the private sector also has to, of course, uh, the public sector, they have to definitely abide by the rules of the planning authority, and even in the private sector also has to follow the plan priorities and objectives. So abide by those rules. So that means what? You see, in a capitalistic economy, the private sector, they can, I mentioned what to produce, how to produce. The resources will be allotted for the production of only those kind of commodities. So if the demand for certain kind of mobile phones, if the demand for certain kind of cars is more, is there, it is prevailing in the market. So the resources will be allotted directly for the production of car, those kind of car, those models of cars, those models of phones, etc. But whereas in the case of mixed economic system, it is not totally free like that, because mostly the mixed economic system is, they are motivated more by welfare than by profit. So the resources will be allotted, the first priority will be given to the production of whatever those commodities or services which are going to improve the welfare of the majority of the sections of the population. So even the private sector, because the natural resources, then material, money, everything is limited. So the private sector cannot just take the resources and start producing cars or mobile phones, isn't it? So the plan, according to the plan priorities only, they can operate. So abide by those rules. So we can, and so as I said, the role of government and planning is more in this kind of economic system. So the role of government and planning are relatively more in these kinds of economic system. So we can have example India, Pakistan. So we are all having the mixed economic system. Okay, that is the second type. Then the third one is the based on the third type of economic system, that is planning under socialism. So planning under socialism, there is no private sector at all. So everything is, all the decisions are undertaken only by the government, that is the central planning authority. So in socialism, the entire decision, that is what to produce, how to produce, whom to produce, the allocation of resources, what price to fix. So there is no role of market mechanism here in socialistic countries. So regarding production, allocation of resources, everything is decided only by the completely done by the central planning authority. So completely in the hands of, there is no role for market or private sector, in the hands of the central planning authority. So here there is no role for market mechanism. In capitalism, the role for planning is, I mean, you can't say there is no role, it's very, very less, very, very minimal. But here there is no role for market forces in socialism. So example, you can have Russia. Okay. And then apart from these types of planning, which is totally based on the types of nature of economic system, continuation, we have other types of planning, again, which is almost based upon the nature of economic system. That is, sorry, democratic planning versus authoritarian planning. So the name itself should be giving you the clue. So authoritarian planning is total authority. So the totally vested in the hands of the government or the planning authority. That is the authoritarian planning. In democratic planning, the plan, priorities, targets, policies, everything is taken and implemented, taking into consideration of the public view also. Based on the opinion of the masses or the people of the country, the plan, priorities, targets, and policies are fixed by the government. So that is a democratic planning, which is not there in the authoritarian planning. Okay. So in democratic planning, I mean, people have a say in a democratic planning. Okay. So what are their requirements? What are their needs? So those requirements of the general public, its state, that is country, is also taken into consideration before the planning authority fixes the plan, targets, or priority. So state fixes the targets according to the opinions of the people in the country. So, I mean, that means what we are, there is a freedom of activities. It is not totally decided. Everything is not totally decided by the planning authority. There is freedom for the people. So freedom in economic activities is allowed in democratic planning. So Indian planning is a democratic planning. Example, you can give India. Just the opposite is the authoritarian planning. There is no freedom for the public views are totally not taken into consideration. Totally, it's decided by only the central planning authorities. So in authoritarian planning, authority, that's what the meaning is, isn't it? So in authoritarian planning, the decisions are taken by the central planning authority without taking into consideration the public opinion, without taking into without taking public opinion into consideration. So that is an authoritarian planning. So this you can give example. USSR in the early decades of USSR, before it was USSR, isn't it? In first few decades of 1900s. But of course, nowadays there is, because that time it was totally like a socialism, but nowadays there is no country which is totally following the capitalistic system, which is totally following the socialistic system. So almost in the capitalistic countries also the government is interfering. In the socialistic countries also the private sector is also operating. So nowadays the present practically no country is completely capitalism, completely socialism. Okay, only the degree to which the government interferes in capitalism, or the degree to which the private sector interferes in socialism, that keeps changing. Okay. So next, centralized and decentralized planning. So centralized and decentralized planning is, it is again, it is also like an authoritarian planning or a socialistic planning. So the central planning authority makes the plan and just passes it over and to the other areas, and everybody has to abide by that. So in the decentralized planning, it is what you say, the plan itself is decent because we are having the democratic planning, isn't it? So only the major decisions are made by the planning authority, and whatever the policies which are decided by the planning authority, the implementation of all those policies, implementation of that strategy, implementation of that action is is with the all the regional units. So the central government makes the plans, and it is the responsibility of the state government to implement all the plan programs. So again, it is the from the state government point of view, it is the responsibility of the district or the village municipality to execute all the plan programs. So that is the decentralized planning. Okay. So put it in words. Centralized planning is the model adopted by the former Soviet Russia. So basically, the entire decisions, there's not much of a difference between authoritarian planning and the what do you say? Authoritarian planning and the centralized planning. So the entire decisions are made by the central planning authority. Basically, the meaning of other words I can replace so that you will understand. So decentralization is spreading any authority, any power. For example, in decentralization of industries, that means what? The industries are spread over all over the country. So that is decentralized industrialization. Centralized means concentration of industries. If the industries are concentrated only in one area, that is the meaning of centralized. Same meaning. So decentralized means the industries are spread over all over the country. So the same concept for centralized planning and the decentralized planning. So the decentralized planning is done like our country, India, by countries like India, because we are able to do that since we have chosen the path of mixed economic system, which follows a mixed economic system. So when we choose mixed economic system, uh, we have to give importance to the private sector also. Individual freedom has to be given, even though we are not giving completely like the capitalistic countries, still we have to give a certain amount of freedom. We have to take into their consideration also when we follow. Otherwise, there is no need for private sector, isn't it? So that consideration is given in the mixed economic system. So even though the important decisions are made by the planning authority, its execution is with the cooperation of different units. There is no force here. That's why democratic. Cooperation of the. So indirectly, the government will persuade the different units to abide by the rules in the form of giving tax concessions in finance, all those like that. Indirectly, the government persuade the people to follow the planned policies. There is no actually like how we are having the family planning program and all. So there is no force here. So that is the decentralized planning. Okay. Then the next one is planning from above and below. So planning, the central planning authority makes the decisions and passes it on to the regional units. That is planning from above. So planning from below, the regional units makes the plan, the villages make the plan, they passes to the district gives to the state, and states gives to the central government. So that is planning from below. So under planning from above, the central planning authority prepares the plans and forwards down to the regional units. So under planning from below, just the opposite. The local and regional units prepare according to their needs. According to their requirements, they make the plan. According to their needs and forwards above to the central planning authority. So which is more realistic? The regional units, they know what is the problem they are facing. So it seems it is more realistic and more practical and more beneficial. And finally, the last one, perspective planning and annual planning. So perspective planning is whatever that planning for for a long period of time. See, for example, we are having eradication of poverty, eradication of unemployment. All this can be achieved in 1 year, 2 year, or even 5 years. But it is not a long-term goal. The 5-year plans are only a convenient way for us to reach that goal finally, maybe after 10 years, after 15 years, after 20 years. So it is a perspective planning so Indian planning is a type of perspective planning. So it is a long-term planning that is for maybe 15, 20 years. That means uh, in which the set targets are supposed to be achieved. That is a perspective planning. Whereas and 5-year plan is only a convenient way for us to reach that target. Whereas annual planning it is planning for 1 year. So whatever the resources targets to be achieved within a year, the resources are all those are allotted accordingly. Okay, that is planning for 1 year. So all the goals will be fixed only for 1 year. So that is the annual plans. Okay, so these are all the types of planning. Hope the concept is clear. So in the next video, I will continue with the remaining topics of planning. Okay. So if you find this video useful, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any doubts or suggestions, please mention it in the comment box. Okay. So until my next video, next class, take care. Bye-bye.